Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by Titan FC bantamweight, Brock Jardine. Brock, how are you?
Good.
Brock, you got a fight coming up April 25th at Titan FC 25. How's training been going for the fight?
It's going really good. I'm having a lot of fun. Training's going well. Probably the biggest thing is just, having fun again, kind of getting back to, the whole reason why I got in them, and it was just to have fun, and so I can't complain. Everything's going good.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's been a while since we've seen you in action. It's been over a year since you last fought. What's been the reason for this layoff? Is it because you've had injuries? Is it because you've had trouble finding fights? Is it because your last two fights didn't go your way? You were released from the UFC. Is it maybe during this time you've been doing some soul searching because of the fact that you were released by the UFC? Give us an idea what's caused this layoff.
A little bit of everything, actually. I had some injuries. My last UFC fight, I had to let that heal up, and then I was trying to find a fight. I was having some hard times getting a fight, and then I finally got one, and I had a injury, and then just after that, I was just kind of, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I kind of thought about, I guess you'd say, retirement from competing. But I was enjoying the martial arts side of things. I teach at my gym, the Pit Elevated, in Orem, Utah, and I was just really enjoying the teaching and coaching, and I was being around it, and not having to have the stress of a training camp, and just using the experience I've had. I wrestled my whole life. I got to wrestle Division I, and fighting professionally, and then, being a UFC vet, I was just trying to help out some of the amateurs and beginning pros. I was helping them get ready for their fights and everything, and I was like, I kind of got that bug again, and luckily I was able to get a hold of Titan, and, they got the deal done.
Mm-hmm. Now, give us a timeline here. When exactly were you debating about whether or not to fight again, and then when you made up your mind that you were going to continue to fight, when was that decision made? Could you give us a timeline of when all these events take place?
So not last February, but February of 2013 was my last UFC fight, and
right.
that injury took a few months to kind of heal up, and then I was trying to find a fight for months. I almost had a couple things with a couple other organizations, and they just didn't end up working out. And then, I finally got a fight, and then I got injured. That was in about July, and I started training. Probably like September, October was when I was just really focusing on helping my team, and being a teacher and a coach, and just I just was really focused on that, and was really enjoying that. And then it was probably probably towards the end of the year, beginning of this year, I was just kind of like, I don't want to have any regrets, when I'm whenever I do decide to hang it up, which I like to. I've always kind of told myself 35. I don't think I can do the Randy Couture,
right.
Dan Henderson route. But,
right.
So yeah, I was just kind of like, I want to give it another run. I was kind of deciding if I wanted to, try to go the Bellator route, or if I really wanted to get back into the UFC, and. So I knew I wanted to compete again. It was after my teammate Ramsey Nijum fought in Georgia. I went out there for the week with him. I spent the whole week out there helping him train, cut weight, get ready for the fight. And then after his victory there in Georgia, I was like, yeah, you know what? I really want to try to get back to the UFC. And so that's where Titan fit in perfect. They have the UFC out clause, and they try to keep you active and help you get back to the UFC. So I can't complain.
Now, one more thing about this timeline we're kind of on right now. When exactly did you start looking for fights after you made the decision that, hey, I want to come back, I want to continue my fighting career?
Let's see. I mean, it was probably, shortly after that, I was trying to, I talked to some management companies, and, they're just kind of like, you're in that position where, you just got cut, and it's going to be hard to find you a fight, because, people might not want to, you'll be a tough fight for somebody, and this and that, and so I tried going the manager route, that, it didn't really work out, so I was just like, man, so I started emailing different promotions, and some never responded, some were like, we'll keep you in mind, and as soon as I hit up Titan that day, like, the matchmaker called me and, got the deal done, so I was really excited that, they gave me kind of a second chance to get my MMA career started again.
Now, you mentioned that your plan is to make it back to the UFC, so I thought the first three organizations that came to my mind that you could potentially be looking at, number one, Titan, obviously you're signed there, but number one, Titan, number two, RFA, and number three, Showdown Fights, which is in Utah, and you fought for them in the past. Were those the three big ones that you were looking at?
I had a fight for Showdown, but that was when I got hurt. And,
okay.
Unfortunately, had to pull out of the fight. So.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to continue there. Sorry about that.
Oh, sorry.
I was drinking water, and I was like, I thought he was going to continue. So, anyways, I quickly want to touch on your UFC run, because this fight for Titan is going to be the first time we're seeing you in action since you've been released from the UFC. You turned professional in 2007, and by 2012 you were in the UFC. What was it like fighting for them? Because, it was very quick. I mean, obviously, you had the two fights, and then you were out. It took you, 10 fights to make it to the UFC, and then after two, you're back out on the regional circuit again. Did it feel really quick that you were a part of the UFC? Did it go by really fast?
No, it did. It was definitely, it was devastating. I mean, maybe that's being a little over dramatic, but,
right.
It was definitely, it was hard, I was in tears, like, because you worked so hard to get to where you want to be, and, no one to blame but myself. I was the one out there fighting. My first fight was against Rick Story, and I really think I let his name play too much into my head, and
right.
I only had like a 3-week training camp for that, and so I was just, my game plan going into that fight for me, I was just like, I just want to try to make it exciting and, don't gas out.
Right.
So that's not exactly the best game plan to go and get the W, but, I was lucky enough to get another shot, and then, I felt like the Kenny Robertson matchup was a really good matchup, and then he hit, the submission of the, I don't know, I mean, to me it was, the submission of the year on
right.
me, but, nothing you can do except, tip your hat and say, you're the better man today, so. But, yeah, I was, it was hard because it took so many years to get there, and then it almost felt like I wasn't a part of the UFC because it was so quick, and then also, like, I didn't get that win,
Right.
Sometimes I feel like I can't call myself a UFC fighter because I never went into the organization and got a W.
Now, you mentioned the Rick Story fight, and that was your debut. He had, I think, 9 fights or 10 fights when you fought him. You mentioned that it was on short notice. He had a lot more experience than you. Now that you look back on it, I'm sure you've thought about your UFC run a lot in the past couple months and this year layoff that you've been on. But now that you look back on it, was it too soon for you to be in the UFC? You were 10 fights, 9-1 when you made the jump to the UFC. Now that you look back on it, was it maybe a little bit too soon for you to be in the UFC?
Maybe at the time, I wasn't quite sure, but then after that Rick Story fight, I mean, just a couple years before, they were talking about, Rick fighting for a title.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so after that Rick Story fight, I performed, my performance was okay. Definitely wasn't to the best of my ability, but I went in there and fought, hard 3 rounds, and, I ended up losing a decision to a former title contender, So after that fight, I kind of felt like, I did deserve to be there because, my first fight, 3 weeks notice, I just fought, not too long before that, so I was still banged up from my previous fight and had some injuries and whatnot, so I was like, I got 3 weeks to fight, Rick Story, well, better get in shape and lose some weight, and, so there's definitely questions leading up to that fight, but then I feel after that fight, I proved that I did belong there, I still had a ways to go to become, one of the big names in the UFC's welterweight division, but definitely felt like I could be a part of the organization. And then, like I said before, just unfortunately, I ran into Kenny Robertson and his slick submission, and he's still in the UFC and doing well. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, who gave you the news that you'd been released from the UFC? Was it Joe Silva? Was it your manager? I mean, we've heard some crazy things where guys are finding out on the internet that they've been released, finding out on Twitter that they've been cut. How did you find out that you were no longer with the UFC?
My manager at the time told me. As soon as that Robertson fight ended, I was upset and I was really afraid I was going to get cut, and and I thought I made it out. I thought I was hoping to get a third chance since that first Rick Story fight was such a short notice, and
mm-hmm. Right.
And it wasn't until like 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks after I fought was when I got released. So I thought I was in the clear because normally, they'll release you, somewhat quick after you fight. And so after like the 2-week mark, I was like, all right, I think I'm going to give one more shot, to do this and prove to myself that I can get a win. And, unfortunately after that, they released me. That was at the time, too, when they were cutting a lot of fighters because of the Strikeforce merger. So, from my understanding, Joe Silva told my manager that, they didn't want to because they wanted to give me another shot because that first fight was such short notice against a guy who's had 10 fights already in the UFC, and it was my first. But, they just had to make cuts for the merger and whatnot. So, but I definitely understood from the business standpoint. I had 2 shots and I didn't win. So, now I'm eager to, prove to myself that I can get back there and then that I can get a win.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, when exactly does Titan come into the picture? How recent did you sign? How after you had made the decision that you were coming back to fight and going to continue on this path to get back to the UFC, when did they come into the picture? Because I believe the last show that they did, the February show, when they showed a list of UFC fighters that they had signed, or ex-UFC fighters that they had signed, your name was on that list. So when exactly did Titan sign you?
I want to say it was the beginning of February. It was either late January, beginning of February. I believe the beginning of February was when I signed my contract for Titan. And so as soon as I signed that, they told me they were going to put me on their April card, and I pretty much started training and dieting and getting ready for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, this camp that you're in right now, is this considered, in your opinion, do you consider this a long training camp for you?
Yeah, it's been a little bit longer, just because I had a little more weight to lose, and originally they were kind of thinking the beginning of April, and then once everything kind of settled, towards the end of April, which, probably worked out better for me just to get my weight back down and to get in shape. It wasn't like I wasn't training, but there's definitely a big difference when you're just helping out your teammates and then when you're the one fighting. So having the few extra weeks has definitely helped out my camp.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, this matchup with Daniel Roberts, you could really make the case that this is a fight that could be happening in the UFC. If some certain things go differently, this fight could be happening in an octagon, not under the Titan banner, but under the UFC banner, because you were in the UFC and then just recently got cut. And Daniel Roberts, he was on the way back to the UFC. He was on like a 3 or 4 fight win streak, and then he lost to Justin Baseman in his last fight. So we could really make the case here that, if some certain things go differently, this could be a fight in the UFC, because you guys both have fought there and you're both very skilled. So was that mainly the reason why you decided to go with Titan, because that's an organization that can bring you top-level talent, or was it just that this is an organization that is willing to let guys go to the UFC if they rebuild themselves and are worthy? So was it more of the quality of opponents they can bring you, or is it just their business model?
Both. At the time, it was, when I signed, probably the big thing was having that UFC out clause, and then, then you started to see all the signings. They had all the guys they signed before me, and then even after I signed, there's a lot of good welterweights for Titan, and so I definitely have my hands full if I want to make a run, to be the champ in the division, or one of the top guys. There's definitely a lot of guys got to take a fight at a time and prove that I do belong at the top of the division. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I get to fight. I get to compete against top level athletes, and get to fight on national TV. So there's really no losing in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's at stake for you in this fight? Obviously, it's a big fight for you because you're trying to rebuild yourself and make it back to the UFC, and it's the first time we're going to get a chance to see you in action since you left the UFC. So that's we already know that that's at stake for you in this. But outside of that, is there a bigger pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Because right now there's another big welterweight fight on this card: Todd Moore versus Ricky Legier Jr. And then, of course, you have your fight against Daniel Roberts. So maybe we could potentially be seeing a title picture, a bracket here, and maybe the winner of your fight and the winner of the Legier Todd Moore fight could be fighting for the welterweight title. We obviously have a bunch of other guys Titans signed that you could make the case could be in the mix as well. Matthew Riddle, he just fought at middleweight, but he's really a welterweight at heart, so I could see him in this welterweight picture as well. Is that something that's being set up here? Has Titan told you anything that this might be, a title eliminator between you and Roberts?
No, they haven't mentioned anything like that. That the next title shot or whatever is between you four or anything like that. Looking at it, that thought's definitely crossed my mind. But it's not something I try not to look too far ahead, especially with a tough opponent like Daniel Roberts. And as far as what else is at stake here, I think that's the thing that has helped me this last year, and all the coaching and training that I've done is, of course I want to go out there and win. I'd be lying if I said I don't care about winning or losing, but now that I'm older, I realize what the important things in life are, and for me, my number one priority is my daughter, and so at the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to come home. My daughter's still going to, love me and want to play with me and watch movies and play with dolls, and, I'm still going to have my job at the gym and all my friends, and they're not going to care if I win or lose, and so I think that's what made this camp a lot more fun, is that I just realized that, at the end of the day, if losing a fight is the worst thing that happens to you in life, then, you're going to have a pretty good life.
Mm-hmm. At the Pit Elevated, the gym that you train at, you have a lot of great guys to work out with. You have Josh Berkman, Steven Seiler, Court McGee, Clay Collard, Ramsey Najim, Sean Powers, a lot of great guys in that gym for you to work out with. I'm just curious, what's it like going with those guys on a day-to-day basis?
Man, it's you have your good days and you have your bad days, so it's definitely you got to bring your A game, but it's really good because we'll be competitive and push each other, but we also learn a lot from each other. Josh Berkman, he's been doing this for a very long time, and same with Court McGee. He's been a martial artist since he was 5 years old, so. Just training with all these, top level guys and coaches that I have at the gym. It's fun. I get to go in and, push myself and test myself on a daily basis, and just every day try to get a little better, whether it's in stand up, jiu-jitsu, my conditioning, whatever the aspect might be. I really try to take it a day at a time and just worry about, the practice in front of me, not trying to worry about what I have to do later that night or anything like that. Just really try to be in the moment and learn as much as I can in that particular practice on that day.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just curious, who are the coaches at the Pit Elevated? Because from what I understand, John Hackelman, who runs the Pit in San Luis Obispo, California, he never shows up there, and if he does show up there, it's once in a blue moon. So who are the coaches there?
The head coach here is Coach Jason Mertley. He's our head coach there. We also have Arnold Anderton, Kwame Stevens. We have a strength coach, Austin Carter. And then Hackman, he'll come every now and then. It all depends on who's in camp and whatnot. Most of the time, the fighters will go out to California and stay there at his house at the old school pit compound, and just train there. You're kind of up in the mountains, and you don't really get cell service, so you just kind of eat, train, sleep, and play some video games.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, who's going to be in your corner for this fight?
I'll have my coach Jason Mertley, and then Ramsey Najim. He'll be in my corner, and then my brother's also going to be in my corner. He's been a big supporter, throughout my MMA career. He's done a lot for me and my daughter. Just being a good big brother and an uncle. So I'm gonna have those three in my corner.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now you're going to be fighting Daniel Roberts on April 25th. What are your thoughts about him as an opponent?
He's a very tough challenge. I look forward to the challenge. He's definitely a good wrestler, a good grappler. So that's something I know he's always going to be looking to do, try to take me down and submit me, or his stand-up has gotten better. He's got some good tools on his feet as well. So I really look forward to the challenge. That was one of the things I wanted to test myself, against some of the best fighters in the world while I still can, and luckily every day at practice, I got Berkman and Court McGee, and those guys are, Berkman's around the top 10 if he's not in it, and Court's probably just not too far behind him, and then I have my other teammates, so I get to test myself on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. At the gym, and so I really want to, test myself against, people outside of the gym, and I'm 28, I'll be 29 this summer, so I still got a few good years in me to really test myself, and that's what I'm really looking forward to in this fight.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're no stranger to unique submissions because of your Kenny Roberts fight. Have you seen this new submission that Daniel Roberts has created? It's called the Ninja Necktie. Have you seen that at all?
I haven't.
Oh well, there's a video on YouTube. It's a submission that he made up. It's kind of like a Darce choke mixed with like a inverted arm triangle mixed with a north-south choke. It's very weird. It's very strange. It's something that he's invented. So it's on YouTube. You'll be able to find it. Just type in Ninja Necktie Daniel Robertson. I think you'll be able to find it. But anyways, I'm just curious. What do you think Daniel Robertson's camp? What do you think they see in you? What do you think they view you as? Do they view you as someone who is a step up in competition? Do you think they view you as just another guy? Do you think that they view you as someone that he should steamroll? What do you think they think of you?
In my opinion, they'll view me as a tough fight. I went in against Rick Story and he couldn't finish me. And then against Robertson, he hit that kind of crazy submission, and my only other loss is to Tony Ferguson, who's in the UFC doing really well. And so, the guys I've lost to are very legit guys, and I've only been finished twice in my career. I think Roberts has only been finished once in his career, so I'm sure they're expecting a tough, well-rounded fighter that's going to be hard to finish, and they're expecting a 15-minute battle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, this fight is going to air on CBS Sports Network. It's the first time, really, that you've been on this platform. Your Kenny Roberts fight and the Rick Story fights, those made air, but this is the first time that you're really, being out there. You're high on this card that's going to be airing live on CBS Sports Network. Does it mean something to you? Is it important to you to be fighting on a platform like this?
I treat it just like any other fight. When you think about it, I definitely feel honored and privileged that Titan has put me up there on the card. I think they're probably seeing the same things that I am, that me and Roberts are going to, go after it. And we both like to finish. I believe I did an interview not too long ago. The guy was telling me that Roberts' finish percentage is slightly over 80%. Mine's just slightly under 80%. So we definitely go out there and look to finish the fight, So I kind of think that's what Titan was looking at, too. We have high finishing percentages, both been in the UFC, both hungry to get back, So to put us up there, high on the card, it's definitely, I feel honored and privileged, and just going to try to go out there and put on the best performance that I can that night.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, since this is the first time we're going to see you back in action since you left the UFC, is there anything that you're looking to prove, anything that you're looking to showcase in this fight?
Probably just showcase a little bit of everything. I'm since my last fight or my two UFC fights, just want to showcase that I'm a whole new fighter. I honestly think that if I go in and put on a really good performance against Roberts, and whether I get a finish or just put on a really good performance, that could easily be one of those fights that put me right back into the UFC. Like you said, Roberts, he fought there 7 times. He was on his way back. I honestly feel I've seen his last fight against Baseman, and I felt like Roberts won that fight. He lost a split decision, so Roberts could easily be back in the UFC right now if one more judge kind of saw the fight differently. So and that's happened before in the past. It happened to Kenny Robertson. He got cut, fought a UFC vet and knocked him out, and he got brought back in. So that's definitely something in the back of my mind that, if I go out and put on a really good performance or get a finish, that I could be right back in.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you bring up Kenny Robertson, because he was released because the WEC guys were coming in, and you mentioned that a factor in why you got released was because the Strikeforce guys come in. So maybe you might be onto something. Maybe an impressive victory over Roberts might get you back there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely in the back of my mind. Obviously, Roberts in his career has been hard to finish, but, that's what I'm going to try to do. That's what I try to do every fight. Even my last fight against Robertson, as soon as he shot in, I went for the arm-in guillotine. That was something I was practicing a lot, and it was tight, and I didn't quite get it that day. But that's just how I am, and I believe that's how Roberts is too. We just look to go for the finish and try to put on an exciting fight.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just curious, do you have any worries about ring rust? Because you've been out for a long time, but at the same time, Daniel Roberts has been out for a while. So do you think we're on an even playing field here?
Yeah, I would say we're on an even playing field. And then also, if you look at my fighting career, I've had long layoffs in the past. Right before I got to the UFC, I had a year layoff because of surgery. And I came back and fought Blazavena, who was in the WEC.
Right.
I was a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I fought him on about a year layoff and ended up getting a second-round TKO finish against him. So the long layoff is something I've been through before. It's something I've experienced before. In my opinion, when you're training with high-level guys, you don't have ring rust. I think ring rust is just more of a excuse people try to use. And I mean, if you're training hard and training with the right people, you're probably not going to have that problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Brock, last question. I'm just curious, how often are you told that you have the best MMA name?
I've heard that a time or two before, so hopefully, make a bigger name for myself after this fight.
Mm-hmm. Also, Brock, I'm curious, are you ever asked if this is your real name?
I don't get that asked. Okay. I asked if I'm related to Keith.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my next question.
Okay. Yeah, that's the main question I get, and I just always tell people, I'm like, yeah, that's my cousin. And, no one's ever, I've had, one person call me out on it before, and I just kind of, BS my way through it. So,
yeah.
But, yeah, so I always tell people he's my cousin. I mean, I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line we are, but...
Yeah. Who knows? We might all be related to each other. You never know. We don't.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know. We don't know where we all come from. Who knows? But it's kind of strange because we always hear about like great porn names, like these guys come up with this, but this is really your name. It's just a great coincidence. So I really enjoy it, and glad everyone else is getting a real kick out of it because I think it's a really good name. So you picked the right profession, I must say.
Yeah. I remember when I first made the UFC, I saw a lot of pictures of Keith Jardine's face on Brock Lesnar's body or vice versa, stuff like that. So I got a kick out of it. I thought it was funny.
Right. Definitely. Brock, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you'd like to say to the fans?
Yeah, I want to thank my gym, the Pit Elevated. I want to thank Warrior Fuel, Bam Bam's Barbecue, VA Mortgage Leader, Ribbon Athletics, The Throne, and I think that's it. And then just for the fans, I hope you tune in on April 25th on CBS Sports and watch me and Daniel Roberts put on the fight of the night.
Brock, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it, and best of luck coming up on April 25th.
Hey, no problem. Oh, also, Theron Fight Gear. I forgot them, so I want to thank them, too. But, yeah, thank you for having me on, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.